I'm Nick LeBarry, movie critic for NovaStream Network.
And I'm Georja Malt, founder of With G Digital and lover of literature.
And welcome to The Book Was Better, a monthly podcast with Georgia and myself in which we read a popular novel, watch the movie that the novel was adapted into, and discuss the age-old debate of what was better, the movie or the book. Thank you all for tuning in once again. It has been, I think we're almost on episode 10.
Oh, you're kidding?
I don't know. I haven't been keeping count, but we're almost in the double
10.
digits. This could be episode 10.
It's our 10th anniversary.
And if it's not, it'll be the next one. But all your support for the show has been fantastic. What did we do last month, Georja Malt? What did we do? We've been recording these very all over the place, and it's been a very busy time for both of us. And I can't
we did Perks of Being Wallflower.
We did Perks of Being Wallflower, that's right. So, and that episode did really well. We actually got a lot of nice feedback, and a lot of people love that book and love that movie. That I thought was quite underseen or underread, but apparently not so much. So thank you for your support on that. So if you are watching us on YouTube, thank you. And if you are listening, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and of course, iHeartRadio. I believe you're still there. One person out there who is listening to us on that platform. We see you and we love you. But it was my pick this month, and I wanted to sort of keep within maybe like in the pop culture zeitgeist. And there is a film coming out in the month of November, of which this episode is dropping. And it's a prequel to the very much beloved young adult, probably like the young adult novel film franchise that really I guess Twilight did it, but like made them goodish. We'll talk about that, I guess. But the prequel is coming out, The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Say it 5 times fast.
So if you listen to all the podcasts on nicksflicksfix channel, the monthly movie marathon would have just dropped where Peter Gray and I talked about that, and I could not get that title right once. I was saying Hunger Birds, Snakes and Songbirds and Ballads. I was like the Hunger Ballads of Song Snakes and Songing Birds. It's a long title, but that's coming out this month. So I thought for our show here for The Book Was Better, we would go back to the beginning, go back to where it started with Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, and obviously the 2012 film directed by Gary Ross that took the world by storm, so to say. Before we crack into sort of the nitty-gritty of it all, when were you introduced to The Hunger Games? Book first, I'm assuming?
Yes, book first, and I read it, I want to say I was like grade... When did you say the movie came out?
2012, and then the book itself was released in 2008.
Yeah, so I think about 2009. I was pretty early onto this. I was about 14. That's what I thought. And, I devoured it in one day, and I
Holy moly!
Because it's just so imagine not knowing. Imagine not knowing the movie concept.
It's a great point.
I had no idea what was going to happen to her or these kids, and I was just like,
it's something so different for like the young adult scene too, where it's like mass murder. Dystopian future. Like, I get it totally, right? Like,
I was like very disturbed by it, but it's like that thing where you can't look away. Like, I'm like reading it through my
the car crash rule, right? Like, you always kind of have to have a look. But
it was.
That's interesting that you experienced that in word form too, because obviously the movie itself is quite a visceral movie too, in some regards.
Not my style.
Not your style normally. But where does the Hunger Games then sit for you? Are you you're like, it's the tolerance, the level of violent tolerance that you're okay with?
Just that
child murder is where you draw the line.
No, actually, you know what? I wouldn't even say it wasn't like Twilight for me. I wouldn't say I was a Hunger Games fangirl.
Right, okay.
It was just that I thought the premise was interesting. The books, if you consider... I consider them well written for what they are. Like, it was very thrilling, and she did a good job of like keeping you on the edge of your seat.
Especially when the games start.
And like and the world building stuff, like I thought it was all really interesting. So I read all the books, so obviously I watched the movies.
Right.
Definitely wasn't a fangirl though. Like there were people who were a lot more into it.
You sort of had, But
you
said Twilight was your
way more into Twilight.
I'm
a Harry Potter fangirl first and foremost.
Always. Of course, yes.
But then Twilight.
Actually, random tangent side note. Have you seen the trailer for the documentary that's coming out?
Yes, I know. I love Dan.
For those who don't know, Daniel Radcliffe has produced a documentary called The Boy Who Lived, about his stuntman, who was his stuntman, as far as I'm aware, throughout most of the movies, who was paralyzed doing a stunt on the Deathly Hallows.
So sad.
But apparently it's a really uplifting documentary too, because he's so I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, Dad's producing it and he's in it. And
he's in it as well, right? Yeah, so be on the watch out for that.
When did you watch The Hunger Games when it came to cinema?
I did indeed. So 2012, so I remember going...
We would have been grade 12.
Grade 12, we were in high school. I remember going with a group of friends.
Yeah.
And I remember being excited, I guess is the right word, about the concept of like, it sounds so bad saying it out loud, but like there was something cool about the idea. It was like, it's a movie about kids killing kids, right? Like in this battle royale arena thing. And there was a movie that came out in the early 2000s.
Everyone talks about this.
Battle Royale, right?
Yeah.
And I had watched that as like a young cinephile.
Yeah.
And
I've still never seen it, but everyone compares it.
It's the only thing you could like actually compare it to in regards to the actual plot is that Battle Royale is about, it's set in a future where a school is chosen because there's too many kids to have a battle royale, and it's a fight to the death, like the last one must win. So then you get the Hunger Games come out, and that's also like, that movie's like rated, it used to be banned in Australia. It's rated R, it's very violent. I have watched it since recently, and it actually doesn't actually hold up that well for me. I don't think it's actually that good of a movie.
How interesting.
Interesting. But in year 12, I was like, oh, this is like Battle Royale. And everyone's like, what? It's the book. And I was like, what's a book? But obviously this podcast has changed me for the better because now I read books. Beautiful. It's a really moving story, Georgia, about the boy who read. That's who I am.
Oh my God, I can't wait for our doco.
The boy, and you just, it's like you holding books in front of me and I'm like trying to think the words. So I can't even talk, let alone read. But yeah, I was keen because the idea of it, I was like, oh, that's kind of messed up. Like that to me seemed like a cool movie at like 17 years old. And I saw it at the cinema and didn't like it.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was a real pretentious film critic at 17.
You had things you would have done differently.
You know what? As an up-and-coming director at the time, I had things I would have done a little differently. Less shaky cam. But then it's so funny because when I was thinking about obviously rewatching all the movies for the monthly marathon and then rewatching it for this as well, I've only ever watched The Hunger Games when I've kind of been forced to.
Yeah.
So
it's not a rewatch for me.
It's not a rewatch at all for me.
If it is a rewatch for you, I think you might need to do some therapy sessions.
You need Jesus. Yeah. I saw it at the cinemas for the first time. The second time I watched it was before Mockingjay Part 1 came out because the cinema, I wasn't working at the cinema at the time, but with an ex-girlfriend, we all have history. She wanted to go, and my brother's girlfriend at the time was a big reader as well. So we all went together and they were playing Hunger Games, Catching Fire, then Mockingjay Part 1 at midnight. Back when they used to do midnight releases, which was kind of cool. You remember that?
I went to the last Harry Potter at a midnight
screening. So did I. And weirdly enough, tangent episode. That was the first Harry Potter movie and only Harry Potter movie I saw in the cinema.
That's so...
And I hadn't seen any of the other ones leading up to it. So I'm sitting there going like, why is everyone cheering?
That's a red flag.
It was a big red flag. I did not watch all the Harry Potters till I was out of high school. So...
Don't like that.
Yikes. Anyway, like I said, we all got history. So then I watched it again in the cinema. And then the third time I watched it was for this podcast. So I feel like the only times I've watched The Hunger Games is times I've been forced to. And then every time I watch it, I say the same thing. So much potential to be way cooler than it was. Then I read the book. And then I was like, controversially, oh, there's not that much potential there in the first place. Now, I know this is a very controversial stance on it. But I just don't think I can say I'm a Hunger Games fan.
That's okay.
They're not terrible movies, and I will say I'm interested to get what you think of all the books. I know we'll break down the first one most of all, but I think the second movie is the best movie. I think it's the most exciting movie. Catching Fire.
I think that's
Universal, right?
Universal, yeah.
I actually don't mind. I hated Mockingjay Part 1 when it came out.
I don't even remember either of those movies at all.
But after rewatching them, Mockingjay Part 1 is far better than Part 2 because I'm into, maybe it's just as I'm getting older, I'm into political thrillers.
Yeah.
And I think the relationship between Katniss and Snow in the movies is so damn good.
Yeah.
That's what drew me in. So I enjoyed their little...
It's a good villain-hero relationship.
It's a great villain-hero relationship,
Yeah.
and I think it's the best in Mockingjay Part 1, and it's pretty good in Catching Fire. Mockingjay Part 2 sucks, and then the first Hunger Games, I'm like, it's fine. It's completely fine. Where do you stand on the books then? Like, as a trilogy of books,
I think at the moment, like this concept of Hunger Games, this survival of a young adolescent in these situations and becoming the hero is something we're so used to. But you have to think when this was big, this was pre-Divergent,
True.
you know, there's just, like it was really the first huge thing of its kind to really make it big in popular culture.
That's what I think it's like, I get why Twilight is like the number one, but like that kind of started it all. But this to me felt like the first one where they were like actually universally praised.
It's also it's also a different genre to Twilight.
Because
this is more like Divergent, Maze Runner. It's these kids surviving in these she just has to not get bitten by her boyfriend. Like hers isn't exactly a story of survival.
It's like difference between like dark moody Twilight and like dark thematically.
Hers is trying to survive her horniness when Edward won't have sex with her for 4 books.
I mean, abstinent Edward, we should all learn lessons from him, to be totally honest. So,
I sort of respect it for what it was in the time.
Yeah.
And I see it as something that started a huge movement.
Yes,
and I
totally.
also think it got kids who maybe necessarily weren't into, you know, like they got books at school that were just about, you know, it was like Lockie Leonard or like some Aussie
The Day My Bum Went Psycho.
So like boring, or even just more boring, like Australian history or something.
Yeah.
And they were just like, I
remember
reading.
seeing so many like Aussie rules books growing up.
Just like those kind of things. But then something like this comes out and it kind of gets like kids reading because it's
different, right?
And I think it was good for the time and for what it was, and also we are technically too old for it, believe it or not.
I know,
like it's written quite simply because it is for teenagers.
I was thinking that when I was reading it and going back to like Percy Jackson and stuff, and I know Percy Jackson's even younger as well, but there was just something about, I don't know, like to me it felt like aiming it at that audience almost felt like it wasn't appropriate for the story it was telling. Like the world that it's set in, and like I said, the political aspects of it, this dystopian future aspect of it, and then the idea that there is this reaping that leads to this Hunger Games, and like the whole reason why they have to do the procession ceremonies and the training. Like to me, and this is also just coming from like, I was a dumb kid and was it 2008? Like I was 13. I was a 13-year-old boy. Take it as you will. Like a lot of that shit probably would have gone over my head.
Yeah.
Like the not the nuance of it all, but like sort of the things that really build the foundations of like why the Hunger Games exist, to me strike like as more of an adult
for me, it actually wasn't an issue of it going over my head. It's the same issue that I have to it this day. And it's just, to me, it doesn't seem like a believable outcome.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, but then you see things like World War II, what happened, and people commit these atrocities, and I understand that. But I'm just like, so you're telling me a whole city full of people who have their own children are so lacking in empathy of any kind that they're okay with 24 kids going in and slaughtering each other to death every year. Like, maybe I have too much faith in humans, but even but there were even stories from World War II of people who didn't like what was happening and rebelled. But it's I'm just saying, how can you sit there and watch that as a mother?
So interesting, hey, like, because then
and be okay with that.
Your World War II comparison's great because, like, think of all the stories about the 16, 17-year-old boys who like faked and lied about their age to go to war, and that was like a point of pride, right? But it's funny in the Hunger Games how it is basically from like maybe like districts 1 to 8. It kind of is that same thing. It's like a point of pride.
I'd say it's mostly the career district. So it's districts 1, 2, and 4.
Okay, yes, fair. So which is like the districts we focus on. Like all those middle districts get a little bit shafted until the next book.
It just essentially gets shitter as it goes along. So the only reason District 3 is skipped is because that's the computer, like IT.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
so that's why that's not really like they're nerds. They're not essentially dying to get into the Hunger Games, whereas four they're fishing, so they're still a bit more like fed,
they got a bit
wealthy.
about it,
They've got food. They're not starving.
Not like Port District 12.
Yeah,
slum district.
it's actually talking a bit about Suzanne Collins.
Yes,
so she had an interesting start to writing. She actually started writing kids shows for Nickelodeon.
Wow.
And things took a
darker
turn from
She's
there.
pitching this to Nickelodeon probably.
Yeah.
And be like, imagine iCarly, but with death. So.
And her first novels series that she wrote wasn't The Hunger Games. It was this other one. I can't remember the title, but it's kind of like imagine Alice in Wonderland, but you go down the rabbit hole
her name
and it's not a tea party.
to me before The Hunger Games, right?
She
actually it seems like a name where I was like, oh, I recognize that to an extent.
Gregor the Overlander.
Gregor the Overlander.
You haven't seen that?
No, but I feel like I've seen her name on books before I was in high school as well. So
there was 5 of those.
Okay, so
and it was kind of dark,
right?
but then in 2008, obviously she released The Hunger Games, and that was kind of based, from what I've read, there was 2 sort of inspirations for that. It was a Greek mythology about one of the heroes like Theseus and a Minotaur, which I've never read, but that apparently had some inspiration for the story.
Yeah.
And then also her father's career in the Air Force, where obviously he was exposed to the effects of war, the poverty and starvation that can follow war affected places.
Yeah.
And that kind
when
of...
he was younger, I'm guessing as well, right? And how that sort of stays with you.
Yeah. And I actually would have seen it growing up with him still in the Air Force, I'm guessing. And that kind of inspired this. And obviously it was extremely well received.
Yes.
So I have a little fun fact here actually that I found I thought was quite interesting. So in 2014, when I read it, of the top 25 most highlighted passages ever on Amazon Kindle, 19 came from one of the Hunger Games books trilogy.
Oh.
To put in perspective how
the kids were kindling and going nuts on it, eh?
And she also won the Authors Guild Award for Distinguished Service to the Literary Community, which was the first time this award was ever given to a young adult author.
Wow. So this, that's... Because I remember the films being a cultural phenomenon. So it's crazy as well that, the books are so
they were
highly regarded, right?
I just remember them at QBD. We could not keep them on the shelf.
Wow.
They used to fly off.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it has a huge fan base, which has obviously warranted the fact that they've done the prequel, which is, as far as I'm aware, is a reasonably well-selling book as well.
Yeah, people get around it. I haven't read it. But like I said, I'm not a fan.
You're not dying to go to the next one. And the early words, the first reactions came out for the movie, and they said when it comes to first reactions, you always got a grain of salt. But people are saying it's incredibly well made. They said it might be the best Hunger Games movie, which for me is
But even in the trailer, it looks beautiful. It looks impressive.
Same director as the last few Hunger Games films. So in saying that, the first Hunger Games was directed by Gary Ross, and then everything else since then has been Francis Lawrence. And Francis Lawrence probably, in my opinion, most famous for I Am Legend, the Will Smith film, which I think is most noticeable in Mockingjay Part 2 when they have the scene in the sewer.
Yes,
right? I was getting real I Am Legend vibes from that.
Yeah, definitely.
But Gary Ross directed the film and he adapted the script with Billy Ray, and I think Suzanne Collins has a screenwriting credit on it as well.
Always good when they get the author involved. People.
I think so too. My issues, obviously, with the film do stem a little bit from the direction. And then when you kind of look at what else he's directed, he did Ocean's 8, which was the Anne Hathaway, which wasn't a terrible movie.
I mean, for what it was all right.
It was all right. He did, however, do Pleasantville, which
I've heard about that. I've never watched it though.
It's his directorial debut, feature film directorial debut. And I think it's criminally underrated. I love that movie. It's got Tobey Maguire in it.
I love Tobey Maguire.
And it's about he spends most of his time watching a sitcom and he gets transported into the sitcom. He is color in this black and white world. It's really cool. It's a really cool concept. And I quite like it. So he's hit or miss with me, but obviously it's a cultural phenomenon, the film. It $78 million budget when it was made $694 million worldwide. The craziest part to me is that no Hunger Games movie ever made $1 billion at the box office, though. Catching Fire made the most money. It was like 700 and something. But yeah, no movie made it to $1 billion. But still, that's nothing to bark at. Like 694 million is a shitload of cash.
I think the thought of kids killing kids
probably did put some people off.
It put a bad taste. Like my mum would go see a Marvel movie, but she'd never watch this.
Yeah, right. It's just
it's not as accessible. I don't think of a concept.
To me, that's kind of like how I feel about the book. Is that it's just too adult for a young adult audience.
It was
and
controversial.
Not me trying to
like
censor
I'm sure,
anything. Like I watched so much shit growing up that like I know I shouldn't have, but I don't know. It just feels like, and like I said, that's probably just maybe my level of intelligence. Like a lot of it would have gone over my head until it gets to the killing, and I was like, yeah, more. Which again are the coolest part of the movie, because it's obviously like as senseless as the deaths are within the context of the world. In the book and the film, there are some pretty inventive deaths, which are exciting to watch, I guess. But they, at least a lot of the deaths that you really see on screen do have an impact on character and story. Like I'll absolutely admit that. But people did love it. 84% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics, 81% for audiences, and that audience score has over 250,000 ratings.
Yeah, wow.
So people love it, and it's I think Catching Fire is the highest rated.
Yeah.
And obviously this one's not too far behind, but I mean, to really break it down, we haven't even said this yet. I'll read the quick synopsis for it. In a dystopian future, the totalitarian nation of Panem is divided into 12 districts and the capital. Each year, 2 young representatives from each district are selected by lottery to participate in the Hunger Games. Part entertainment, that's my side of it, part brutal retribution for a past rebellion. The televised games are broadcast through Panem. The 24 participants are forced to eliminate their competitors, where the citizens of Panem are required to watch. When 16-year-old Katniss's young sister Prim is selected as District 12's female representative, Katniss volunteers to take her place, and she and her male counterpart Peter are pitted against bigger, stronger representatives. Some who've trained their whole lives. Which is those earlier districts.
I've got our first difference that I would like to point out.
Yes.
Just from that synopsis.
Go.
When Katniss goes into the arena, she's not smaller than most of the competitors. Like in the book, all it talks about, she's underfed, she's scrawny, she's the smallest of anyone in the arena. Clove looks like she's about 12, and she's meant to be a career. Right. She's like this little mousy
mouse kid,
thing.
right? Yeah.
And it's just like...
But Jennifer Lawrence, who played Katniss,
she looks strong.
She's strong. She's fit. She's strong.
I'm like, she looks pretty good.
Even I mean, hey, I will agree. Yeah. But also, like, to me, early on when she's hunting and she's moving around, and the way she carries herself too, I'm like, that is just a strong girl, a strong young woman. You know what I mean? Like when she goes to the Hunger Games, sure, the risk of death is always high, but you kind of be like, she might be okay. Which brings another difference not a difference in the book, but something I noticed in the book, not in the movie, that I loved, is Peter's mum's a savage.
Oh, she's terrible.
She's awful. But my favorite part is when she's talking to Peter and she's like, well, there'll at least be one winner from District 12. And then Peter's like, oh, wow, she must be talking about me. And she's like, I mean Katniss.
Yeah.
So Katniss even knows that there's this whole like undersized and she's underfed, and which in District 12 she is. Like she's literally like has survived before because in a past Peter had given her bread. You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, everyone feels in the story is like, well, yeah, we'll back Katniss to do it. And that to me just like feels like a sheer will, like, I think it's just
like that her father passed away in a mining incident, and like she obviously fends for her whole family. Yeah. She's got that just like that grit, like she's just got that survival.
She had to grow up quick, sort of shit.
But she's just also got this innate survival instinct in her, which just not everyone has.
No, not at all.
I don't have it. I don't think she does.
How long do you think you'd last in the Hunger Games?
No, I've actually thought about this.
Yeah. Well, okay. Cool.
And I wouldn't want someone else to kill me.
Oh,
but I would accept that.
You'd be real poetic about it too. I reckon.
Absolutely. But I would also accept
You'd
that.
Make it a political statement, like
no. But this is the thing. Depends. If my family were all dead, I'd make a political statement. Okay. If my family were alive, I know that they would take it out of my family.
Right.
I've thought about all of this.
So
I've thought about all of it.
It's
so what I would do is wait for I'd hide until a natural disaster occurred, like the fire. And then I would make out like it accidentally killed me.
You do one of those like, oh, I tripped and fell into the fire.
But then nature's taken me back to the earth. Not some
Georja Malt
15-year-old
into the ground.
not some 15-year-old with a rock smashing my head in.
But
like
also
I don't want
also
that.
like a cocky 15-year-old.
Yeah,
like
I don't want any of those careers to kill me.
Those clicky districts. I don't want them to kill me. Yeah. I don't think I would win a Hunger Games, but I'd give it a red hot crack.
Yeah.
I'd be like
Rhiannon's the same.
Rhiannon could
probably
win.
She'd probably win.
She's got a bit of fucking mud about her, eh? Like she got some fire and violence about her sometimes. She scares me. She could win a Hunger Games. I really think so.
But yeah, and what about, so you would just give it your best shot?
I'd give it I'd go out swinging.
Yeah.
If I was going to die, I would be like, I'd want to go out trying to kill like 4 people in one go.
Yeah.
I'd be like, it'd just be like a real honourable, and they'd be like, wow, he really fought to the end.
Something else
and
about
then
the
I'd
Hunger
be like,
Games.
the last thing I'd say was like, delete my internet history. Like just as a joke. Everyone's like, this guy.
Classic Nick.
Is there a comedy district?
Well, actually, that's another point of difference in the book when Haymitch, like, because you know how in the book, Haymitch falls off the stage during the briefing, and the kind of like the Capitol has this whole like, lol, he's such a drunken clown.
It's played like comic, like he's comic relief for the Capitol, right?
Yeah,
like he's a buffoon, and who's also a former Hunger Games winner. He's a victor, right?
But that doesn't happen in the film. Like he doesn't fall off the stage.
I think
though. You think
I like that because I think it. I don't know. I feel like the introduction to Haymitch and with Woody Harrelson playing him too. I like that. Don't think he's a buffoon straight away. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I just felt more attracted to him as a character.
The only thing I'll say about that is the whole element of it. It's not so much the falling off the stage, but like the Capitol's reaction to it, because I think in the movie you almost could forget that he won. There's no like,
that's a fair point. Yeah,
he's like past winners are like celebrities,
and he's definitely not.
Of like didn't have that connection of the Capitol to him as a past victor. He almost just seemed like a strategic consultant that they'd hired who came in, which I know is the job of previous winners. How
good would just a consultant job be just in general? Like, there are people out there who earn so much money being consultants, and imagine just being a strategic consultant on the Hunger Games.
I would hate it though. No wonder he's a drunk. Like, seeing all these kids come in and they just get murdered.
Well, even when
he's
talking to Katniss and Peter, and in the movie, he's like, or in the book, he's like, just don't die. But he has a really, I can't remember the line in the movie. He has a really sick line in the movie about becoming aware of your inevitable death or something. I was like, and Woody Harrelson is great as Haymitch.
Awesome.
That is one thing I love. The casting in this film is perfect across the board. So Jennifer Lawrence is fantastic.
Yeah.
For what Peter needs to be, who can be a frustrating character at times, not to all his own fault. Like, he's just a bit of a weeby fella. Josh Hutcherson's great.
That is so interesting. I have such a different perspective. Okay,
go. Yeah, tell me what you think about young Peter.
I think Peter is, like, first off, he's known from the second that he's going in that arena that he can't win, but he can help Katniss win.
Yeah, I wish I saw it that way.
That's chivalrous.
Now you've said it. Now I feel like a dick because I was just shut up, Peter.
Everything he does from the minute the games start is not to keep himself alive, but to try to get Katniss out of there because he knows she can do it.
God damn it.
To be that selfless.
I feel like this is the third episode now where you've been like, Nick.
I'm like, here's some truth bombs from an emotionally intelligent person to you.
I'm just like, kill the kids.
And also, I think his in the book he's got so much like humor about him in the face of such a dire situation, and I think
I'll agree with that,
Katniss
especially in the book.
Peter are like they're just like opposites that create balance.
I don't feel obviously you don't feel the balance in this book though. To me, like I feel like later on in the movies I felt it a bit more, especially in the second one where they kind of realize, okay, if we want to survive, we have to do it this way. I didn't really pick that up in this book and this movie.
I just find him so endearing, but maybe that's just because I had a crush on him. Like
that could be it too.
Like
I'll tell you what,
you probably didn't have a crush on him.
Yeah, not on Josh Hutcherson, unfortunately. Attractive fella. I think he's a really nice guy. I think he can act well when he's in good stuff. Not Five Nights at Freddy's. But as someone who I even think is a worse male character is Gale. God, I hated Gale.
See, compared
and
to...
he gets worse. He's the worst.
I never was Team Gale.
No, I like...
Team Gale was like being Team Jacob.
Wow. Controversial. I'm not as up to date with the Edward Jacob saga.
That was how I always...
But you are. I'm going to trust you as the literary expert.
The literary shipper expert.
If you need a couple on words shipped, Georja Malt your gal. So hated Gale, obviously love Haymitch. Effie, Elizabeth Banks is perfect as Effie. And the two best castings are Lenny Kravitz as Sinner.
I know, I love Sinner.
Love Sinner. Fucking terrible when he dies in the second book, spoilers alert. In the second movie, sorry. Which you don't find out he's dead until like the end of the third movie, by the way. Oh, no, the beginning of the third movie.
Oh, I sort of guessed.
I guessed he was, but then like that's not really confirmed, and then it's like, yeah, he's dead. And Stanley Tucci as Caesar.
Stanley Tucci is amazing.
I just love Stanley Tucci. I think he's great. But
it's funny because in the book, like Katniss really has a hatred for a lot of capital people, which fair enough.
Yeah, totally.
Because they're putting her in an arena to die.
Yeah.
But she's
and they're real
like,
dicky about it.
When she's like getting interviewed by Caesar, she's kind of like, oh, he'll try and help you out. Like if you don't know what to say, like she's kind of got this weird like soft spot for him. I don't know.
I guess we should say that too, because the book is written totally from Katniss's perspective as well.
This is an interesting point.
Right.
My sister, when we watched the film, said, I just felt like Katniss was emotionless. But in the book...
Where did I write it? Holy shit. My favorite part of the book is that Katniss feels more approachable.
But this is the thing, because Katniss puts on a mask for survival.
Totally. So that's what you see.
And she's put walls up, and that's all we see.
Yeah.
But in the book, she's actually quite... not like naive in a sense. Like she's like, oh my goodness, I found water.
She's a teenager.
Like she's like excited about surviving, and you kind of just feel that human.
I guess in the book, because it takes her like a long time to find water too. I get that.
And you've got that in a monologue of panic, and you see her, and you feel like her kindness towards Rue so strongly.
Yes,
and
totally.
She's a lot more likable.
That's so true, because in the movie, I think you don't necessarily... You get the relationship between Katniss and Rue, but you're so much more affected by Rue's death because of how sweet Rue is, as opposed to Katniss's relationship with her.
Yeah.
But I agree. In the book, and this is not to say that I don't think Jennifer Lawrence's performance is great. Because I think she is great in the film, and I think Katniss is a fucking badass character. Like I really do like her in the movie, but I think understanding her a bit more in the book helps me. Well. Made her feel like a slightly different character, but I felt like I could attach a little bit more to her in that regard. So, but in saying that, like you said, she has to wear a mask in front of everyone, like when she's doing the training and the processions and stuff.
But in the book, she
can't show weakness,
that.
right?
Like she even says, like, I'm not going to tell Peter that, or I'm not going to give that away. Yeah. Like, so I know what she's doing.
Where it goes unsaid in the movie, if you are just watching that.
Yeah, that's what I found. And back to Sinner, something that like, so I feel like in the book, for example, he's actually the one who tells Peter and Katniss to hold hands on the float.
Yes.
Whereas in the movie, it's like Peter's idea. Which I kind of see. This is the other thing I like about Peter. Yeah. I think he's got a lot more going on than he makes out. Like he's quite strategic. That comes to play
in the second film more so. Like the second film, I think the battle. Right, I don't know. We're talking about all of them a little bit, but like the second movie battle for Peter is like strategic versus like actually having feelings for Katniss. Like that's his conflict, right?
I think he sort of has feelings for her the whole time.
I agree. Sorry, but I think it's more at war there. Whereas like in the movie for the first one, I feel like he just like likes Katniss. Like he wants to help her out and stuff, but he's like, I'm doing this because I love you, more so than being like, hey, let's come up with a you know.
Like they don't really know each other, to be fair.
That's true.
He's always admired her from afar, and like he didn't think that he thought only she was walking out of there.
Yeah, that's
so he wasn't even really doing it, like partly because he had a crush on her, but it was more just like out of the kindness of his heart. Well, no, but it's more like kindness of his heart of like, you can survive this. I'm going to help you survive this.
Like anyone could have been there and he might have done the same thing, right?
And then I think through the cave, obviously he didn't realize that she was jumping on board with this strategy because she realized that Haymitch was telling them to play up this love story, but he didn't really realize. So he kind of thought it was real, and it all got a
little bit confused,
and she
especially for teenagers.
Felt it was real as well, but she's so like.
It's a good point.
I think she just was so overwhelmed by everything happening, and obviously her and Gail had a complicated, very close relationship, which she wasn't sure if it was romantic or not.
Yeah.
Like it was like there
was for Gail.
It was. Well, was it?
Oh, well, he gets real fucking jealous later on.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Calm down, Gail.
Hey, Gail.
She's not your property, Gail.
Also
yes.
a sinner. He gives her pin, the Mockingjay pin.
Yes.
Where in the book, they're actually allowed to bring a token from their district into the games.
And it's gifted to her, right? From
the mayor of District 12's daughter, Madge.
District 12's mayor's daughter, Madge, gives her the, which is kind of it's played off as like a joke almost, because I read that the Mockingjays were used as like used by the Capitol.
It was a failed experiment.
Right?
So it's kind of like a FU to the Capitol.
Which kind of, like in the whole, like, of course, District 12 would be the start of the rebellion against the Capitol. Like, it would start with like a, hey, here is this token to be like, FU to the Capitol.
But Cinna helps her hide it. So I think they scrapped that whole token idea.
Well, because she just finds it somewhere.
She gets it from the Hob, the black market. The old lady who works the stand gives it to her.
And then it's given to her by Prim before she goes, right?
I think she gives it to Prim, and then Prim gives it back to her.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of exchanges happening. It's a bartering sort of district.
There's a lot of like minute changes, but I would say like overall, like I didn't find anything that altered like the story drastically.
Not drastically.
For me.
The one thing that I did love that in the movie we did get was that there was like more insight into the games room. Like we would spend more time with Crane and sort of how he manipulates the games. And I think that was cool to be like, oh, this whole thing, which you should obviously know going into it, is like rigged to an extent. But like it was kind of cool seeing how Crane works. But something that obviously the thing that I love in the later films is the relationship, the hero-villain relationship between Katniss and Snow, which, as we were talking about actors, I should have also said Donald Sutherland perfectly cast as President Snow. Yeah. He is such a C-word. Like, I love him so much.
He does a great job.
He's a great job. And that back and forth he has with Katniss is great. But in this film, he has a fair bit of contention with Crane. Like, they don't have a very strong relationship, I would say, because
I would just say that I would just think that that's the pressure of a game
probably
maker.
Because then obviously when the next games master comes in, game maker, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who I can't remember his name. There definitely seems to be a bit more. He's like a bit more into even though he's part of the rebellion, like happy just to strategize with Snow and stuff. Where it seems like Crane in the book and the film to me seems more like this is my creation, and this is like he seemed a bit more pretentious about it.
I feel like I just think that the President Snow doesn't have a lot of respect for Seneca Crane.
No, not at all.
Respect for the next game
totally
maker, but the next game maker he was the game maker for 5 years, and he came back or something like that.
That's right.
So I think obviously
I love, and I don't remember reading this in the book, but I do remember it from the film, and it's where Snow ultimately just tells the game maker not to give people hope. Like we'll start killing the people they like because we can't have another. Like, we need to let them know the Capitol is always in control. And it's just kind of like, I just love that puppet on a string sort of thing, like from President Snow. He's great. But you're right, there's not too much.
He's probably in the film more than he is in the book.
I would agree, yeah. But I mean, when you got someone like Donald Sutherland, right?
And I think we have more behind the scenes access, obviously, because in the book it's all from Katniss, so she's not going to see,
so we get to see a bit more
that going. But something in the arena that happens that I do miss is actually after Rue's death. When you brought that up, I thought when District 11 had pulled all their money and they're a poor district to send Rue a loaf of bread.
I know. It's heartbreaking. Rue is this little girl. She's
died.
Like 8 or something in the book.
She's 12.
She's
you
12.
have to be 12 to enter. 12 is the youngest. 12 to 18.
That's right. Well, okay, sorry. I don't know where I got 8 from then.
She looked 8.
She looks young. She's not. I was like, bless her. But she's, because Prim, right? Of course, Prim's first year as well. just bless her, man. Like for a little girl put in this situation and still to have like wits about her when she uses the tracker jacker nest to like get rid of the shitty district people below. Like,
and when she's like, oh yeah, they can't kill me if they can't catch me. Like, just such a little, like,
I
just
love her.
trying her best.
We all love Rue.
And when she died, because they couldn't send the bread to her, they sent it to Katniss for helping her. And like, this is an incredibly poor district. And to put
all
a gift,
their money,
to put a gift into the games, it gets more expensive as the games go on. So for that must have been an exorbitant amount for them.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart in the book.
I get it. Yeah. And, it's so funny what we've picked out from the books because then my favorite thing from the book that wasn't in the movies.
Incredibly violent, I'm guessing.
So when they released those like wolf-like hound creatures at the end, I loved that in the books, and I get you probably couldn't convey this too well in the movies, but they used the eyes of dead tributes so they would have to stare into the eye. And I was like, that is baller as fuck. That is so...
Oh my God, I hated that. I found it so disturbing.
No, it totally is. But I was in my fucking Barbie shirt, and I'm like, hey, do you want to look at the eyes of dead tributes?
Oh my God.
But to me, that again, it just screams out like this story is like way too fucked up for like young adult, like young kids.
It's pretty messed up.
But like to me, I'm like, oh, that's sick. It's like sick as in it's sickening. Like imagine that. But then one thing, I think this is probably a major change going towards the end, is that when the game maker is like only one tribute can survive, Katniss goes to kill Peter for a second. Like she draws the bow, and I was like, oh, in the book when I was reading, I was like, oh fuck. I was like,
she just doesn't trust.
I didn't expect that. Yeah,
she doesn't trust anyone.
No, I mean, and fair point, fair to her.
And I think Peter gets his knife out. I think she does like pull her bow just in case, but she's a survivor.
Yeah.
Like she has got that wall up so high.
Yeah, totally.
And she's just like, obviously, I think like in the second movie, she'd never believe that of Peter. Like obviously, but like in this one,
she almost kills someone who she thinks killed Peter in the second
like
she's as well. Yeah.
She's sort of like, almost this whole time she's like distrusting that he can be as kind and as good as he is.
Totally, yeah.
And then when he's like throws the knife and he's like, I'm not going to kill you, it's over for me. Like you walk out of here. Like, she's like,
shit.
I'm a bit of a bitch.
And then they got to eat some berries.
But then, yeah. And also this whole thing at the end. So yeah, I felt in the book, because in the book, obviously and the movie, they make an announcement that 2 people can now win if they're from the same district.
Yep.
So Peter and Katniss team up.
Yep.
And just that moment where they renege on it and pull it, it just,
that's
your heart stings.
So, like, it's...
In the book, I felt it more.
I think so too, because I think it happens... The transitions happen so quickly. Like, the
movie,
ending of this movie is very rushed.
Yeah.
I found by the time the hounds are released, so they announce that 2 people can win while there's 3 people left.
Yeah. No. There's
5 left at that point.
And even Cato, the villain, he loses his companion that he could have won with.
That's when he goes like sicko mode on them. Yeah.
But so she dies, Thresh kills her, and he's like, don't leave me, Clove. And I was like, that was the first time I saw him as being like a stupid kid who thought he was untouchable and is now realizing
death is imminent.
I'm going to fucking die here.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
Like it's like he's spent his whole life being told that it's this glorious thing that he's going to win. And then he's like, this is a lie.
Yeah, and I think you get that. I definitely get that more in the book.
Yeah.
Because it happens so quick in the film, and then his confrontation with Peter and Katniss happens really quick, and then that's when it's like, actually only one person can win.
And you're just like, and Katniss and Peter have camped out in this cave for ages in the book.
Yeah.
Like they are in it in the movie, but it's a longer period
longer.
and you just feel like the connection between them, and Katniss is in a monologue of like, we can both get out of this together, and there's
they'll
so
find
much
a way to do it.
Hope that the both of them have, and then it's just like
taken away. It's just taken away.
Jokes.
And then but then the smartest thing they do is they threaten to like kill themselves, like Romeo and Juliet style. Yeah.
If they have no victor.
It's bad. The Capitol don't want that.
They don't want that.
Ratings will plummet. But it's interesting. Yeah, I find that, I much preferred the ending, how the book's ending sort of just like drags it out a little bit more. Whereas the movie, for a movie that is also 2 hours and 20 minutes long, still felt like it had a rushed ending. Which brings me to the main thing that I don't like about both the movie and the book.
All right.
And this could just be I want to get to the stuff real quick. It's just so long. The start of this movie and the start of the book, I was reading and I was like, all right, I get it. I get the districts are in shambles. I get there was a rebellion. I get the capital shit. Like, it just, to me, I felt it took so long, knowing that there was more movies and more books to come. There's too much world building, which I know sounds like a weird criticism, but there's also stuff that gets repeated in later films that I'm like, well, I already know that from the first book. So if we could have shaved this down and really get into the Hunger Games, which is a big portion of the book, but weirdly half the movie, you know what I mean? Like,
but I think like if it is for younger audiences, maybe they just felt they couldn't brush over things
maybe
as quickly.
Potentially, yeah.
And to be honest, I'm
impatient.
I actually didn't mind it.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fair. That's fair.
I think maybe it's just and also a lot of fantasy is incredibly slow burn.
Yeah.
Like if you think this is slow burn,
I can imagine.
Don't read any. Have you tried to read June?
I haven't. It's out there on the bookshelf, and I haven't.
I got a quarter way through it. Nothing had happened. Like these. Like
I felt like that about the movie too.
That's not unusual for fantasy.
Yeah.
Like because they do spend a lot of time world building.
Yeah.
And I definitely read the first half slower than when she got in the arena because the stakes aren't as high.
Right?
And
yeah.
that's But I get.
And there's action and there's thrills and and even still in this movie, I found that the action was a bit of a letdown compared to what I read in the book. I just don't think it's directed well.
I also just don't know if they were so sure, since it was the first thing of its kind, about how much brutality to show of murdering kids.
Yeah,
I think that was. I've thought that before, and I also think
Mockingjay does not hold back.
No, well
they blow little kids up.
They had people, but this was the first one.
Totally, no, I get that. Like it's always a risk, especially from like a film business perspective. But I don't know, just there's something about it where I was like, I think having seen the other films, I was like, there is stuff here that is getting rinsed and repeated.
Yeah.
I guess. And I was like, okay, I know this from the first one. So I think then going back and reading it and being like, I know this.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not finding this like, I don't know. It just slowed it down for me. Even like I was saying, like you read the first half slower. I really struggled through the first half of the book. Again, because I think the best relationship in the films is Snow and Katniss, and we do not get a lot of that.
Yeah,
and that's tough.
It's
for
probably
me.
the most interesting relationship.
It's super interesting, yeah.
But as a young adult, her relationship with an old man who's president's probably not your your biggest
that's
interest. Like it's upon reflection now in the age we are, it's an interesting dynamic.
That's true. And I guess the argument people watching could make is like, well, should you be reading it through the lens of like a young adult? And it's like I feel like I tried to, but I think even then, like I was saying earlier, like so much of it I feel like would have gone over my head.
Yeah.
Like at that point. So
I will say, I'll probably put this in my closing statements if we're ready to wrap it up.
We'll start wrapping.
I'm going to pick the book.
No, I thought that would be
not surprising. It feels good. Feels right to be back, be on the book.
Back on the right path.
I think that for me, like especially there was just a lot of elements I felt more connected to the main characters. I felt more connected to the world. I felt more the intensity of her being in the arena. I felt much more reading it. And then I also like the lore that you get through the books. Like she often drops comments about things that had happened in previous games, and we don't get that in the movie. And I just find those little tidbits interesting. Like
you're a world builder, Jay. That's why though. You got the world in your head there.
I do.
Yeah.
I head in the clouds.
Head in the clouds.
For someone who doesn't like brutality, I didn't mind reading about it secondhand from her. Like she mentions that one year all the contestants, the only weapon they had was a club with spiky things on it to bludgeon each other to death. Like that's fucked up, but it's interesting. Like
it's interesting.
You learn about all these people, how they survived previous games. Like and I missed that in the movie because it was pretty easy in this movie to forget that there were ever any games
beforehand. Yeah, because it's the 74th Hunger Games, right? Yeah,
but I just felt it could have been the first.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
I get that. I absolutely get that.
Not that's the seller. Like it's all around. All the things I've mentioned is what makes the book for me. Where did you land?
So this is actually another tough one for me. This is like kind of almost back to the first episode with Harry Potter. Like I don't love this movie. I think it's fine. And like I said, every time I watch it, I've been forced not forced, but like I've watched it unintentionally, you know what I mean? Or against my will. Gun to my head and they'll like watch The Hunger Games. Reading the book, I found I had the same issues that I felt with the film, but there was more that I liked. I do feel like the book is darker. I feel like the movie just held back. And like you said, once it got its audience, that's why Catching Fire is so much more engaging. It's a political thriller that does have a lot more violence. Mockingjay is a dark political thriller, and Mockingjay Part 2 is definitely darker, more violent, but it is just not as especially when it gets like the brainwashing Peter stuff.
I don't even remember any of this shit. Like I honestly don't. I need to. I watched the second one after I watched the first one for this,
and that's a great movie.
But I didn't watch Mockingjay,
and I don't blame you. So
I hate brainwashing stuff where they forget who they are and have to get.
Have you ever seen The
reminded.
Manchurian Candidate?
I don't think I'd like it. I'm just like,
if it's a book, we might do
remember.
it.
I'm like, remember already. Oh my God. It's like Groundhog Day. I'm
What
like,
about
yep, okay.
What about the Bourne films? Where that whole thing is like he has
I don't know
amnesia.
if I've ever seen them.
They're books.
Oh God.
That can be
Well,
fun.
that's not what I'm picking. So.
It's just like the Bourne Identity. I'm going to go the book for this one.
Yeah.
I think just because I've won the show. Thanks for watching last
Not that
episode
there's
ever.
correct answers because it's opinion based, but correct.
But I like the book and the movie. The things that are similar there are things that I liked, but there were more things I didn't like. And then the book, I was like, oh, cool. I like the fact that the Eyes of Dead tributes are in there. And I liked more of Haymitch. I will say though, his line in the film about coming to terms with your inevitable demise is a sick line.
Nah, he's good.
And he's great. And the casting is perfect.
Yeah.
Like I was reading it as all these people and nothing felt off kilter. Like everything synced well. So I do think the book was better.
Yeah. It was a good adaptation.
It was a good adaptation.
It was a good adaptation.
As good as it could have been.
Yeah.
But I definitely think if I was to read the later books, I think I would probably pick those movies over. But for this particular one here, the book was better, which is the name of the show. Who would have thought?
There we go.
So that's the Hunger Games.
Well, it's technically the book was better, question mark. So
maybe when I introduced, I thought the book was better.
Yeah, you're not lifting the
There's
end
no
enough.
inflection at the end there, right? Yeah. I'll work better on that next time. But that was the Hunger Games. So before we wrap up and give where you can find us online, Georgia, for the December episode of The Book Was Better. I almost called us the Hunger Games. The book was better.
I'm like doing vocal coaching right now. I'm like lifting my finger up to him. For those who can't see, I'm like, better.
I'm getting trained how to talk. Yeah. You'll train me to read and talk. It's great. I'm becoming
exhausting.
a full human being.
Full-time job, this podcast.
You understand how Rhiannon has to just live with me now. What are we going to do for the December episode? And I will tease, not the last episode of the year, but the December episode of The Book Was Better.
I don't know. I feel like you don't like this movie, but I've never seen it. And it's a bit topical with a film that's come out now. I want to do Murder on the Orient Express.
Okay, no. Okay, no. I like this Kenneth Branagh trilogy of the Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile.
Poirot. I only have seen Death on the Nile, though.
Okay.
I've only seen bits and pieces of Murder on the Orient Express, like in the back. Like I've not really watched it properly, and I've never read the books.
So just to clarify too, we're going to be doing the Kenneth Branagh, the most recent version of the films, because there is a film that came out in
The Haunting in Venice.
No, as in the Murder on the Orient Express, there is
another one than the last one.
Not the
one with that big all-star cast. Like before Death on the Nile, there's another one.
Yeah, 1974. The movie came with Albert Finney. That's what I was trying to think.
No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about the modern one.
Oh, that's what I was.
Sorry. I was
clarifying for the audience at home because we'd have some people going like, "Are you doing the 1974 version?"
Oh, I thought you meant another one since then. I was like, was that really necessary? That only came out like a couple of years ago.
No, the Kenneth Branagh who plays Hercule Poirot. I love saying that. And he also directed all three of them. So,
did he?
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well, this is going to be a good one.
Because he did all the Shakespeare adaptations that we grew up watching as well, Hamlet, King Henry V, and Much Ado About Nothing.
Cool.
He directed all those too. So,
well,
I'm
the best
a fan.
thing is I'm going to be reading the book, and I actually don't know who done it because I haven't seen the movie.
Yeah,
so
oh my God,
I'm going to be guessing.
You have picked a banger. Georja Malt.
Thanks,
I
mate.
love Death on the Nile, and then Haunting in Venice is really fun.
I haven't seen that one. I'm a bit scared.
No, it's actually it's not as scary as you think. Imagine like a horror.
Says the guest.
It is so good.
Okay.
I'm excited for this.
All right.
So that's the next episode. I will tease now that we are doing a Christmas episode. We'll be having a Christmas special of The Book Was Better, but we will give more details of that at the end of our next episode. So the Murder on the Orient Express for the next. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I think I have so much to say. But
save it for next time,
save
buddy.
it for the next episode, and y'all can wait till the next episode. But thank you for watching. If you're a big fan of the Hunger Games, and obviously it's a massive phenomenon and loved by many people, let us know in the comments whether you prefer the book or the film, and your thoughts about why I'm probably wrong about everything I said, and why George is right as a literary expert. But until next time, Georgia, where can everyone find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram at withg.co.
And you find me at nicksflicksfix everywhere, Instagram, X, Letterboxd, etc. But until next time, thank you all for watching and subscribing to The Book Was Better.
Thanks, everyone.